Good evening, members. I'll start off by reading the webcasting introduction. And this meeting is to be webcast, and the Chairman will read the following announcement. I'd like to remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or other such use by third parties. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their images captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Please also be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting, and members are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking and switching them on after they're done. Agenda item 2 is advice to public and speakers attending the council planning subcommittees, which is on pages 4 and 5 of your agenda pack. It's there for noting. And I'll just do a kind of a quick introduction. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Area Plan South Committee on Wednesday, the 28th of February, 2024. I'm your chairman, Councillor Kaz Rizvi from Sugar Village. To my right, I have Therese Larson from Democratic Services, Becky Morton as our webcasting officer, and to my left, I have Mr. James Rogers from Planning, and I will be a voting chairman if necessary. So moving on to agenda item 3, apologies for absence, Therese.
Yeah, we have apologies from Councillor Baldwin, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Owen, Councillor Patel and Councillor Barlow, and we have apologies for lateness from Councillor Bannott.
Thank you very much.
From Councillor Jogia.
Councillor Allgood.
Thank you. Councillor Nweke, who's going to apologise, he's going to be late.
Okay. Noted. And agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would like to declare an interest on item 10, planning application EPF 2688/23, 6 Tewkesbury's Close. This declaration is on the basis of, as a ward councillor, I've been approached by residents over a number of years, but in terms of this application from Whittam Close. And sorry, this will just take a couple of sentences of explanation. I've been very, very careful not to fetter my discretion. I haven't expressed an opinion on the application, but because of the level of advice and the nature of the conversation, which was quite appropriate, I've had with residents, I think to protect the integrity of any decision the council makes, I need to declare it as a prejudicial interest, and I will withdraw from the item.
Councillor Brooks.
I have had contact with residents in Whittam Close and also the applicant themselves, but I don't believe that I have fettered my discretion, so it's my intention to stay in the room.
Okay. Councillor Bob Jennings.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It is, again, for me, in relation to item number 10, EPF 2688/23. The applicant is a personal friend, and therefore it would be inappropriate for me to participate in the debate and vote at the end. And in fact, I will leave the chamber for that item. Thank you.
Noted. Councillor Judy Jennings.
Yes, exactly the same.
Just microphone, please. Mic, please. Mic.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, the same for me. Application reference EPF 2688/23. The applicants are close friends of mine, and I shall be leaving the chamber as well. Thank you.
Noted. And lovely to see you both after a while. So, Councillor Allgood.
Yes, thank you. Same application. I have spoken to both parties, the main objector and the applicant. I should also declare that my estranged wife, I believe, still is a dog walker for the main objector. However, that is not a pecuniary advantage to me, I can tell you that. I don't believe it will fetter my decision, so I will be staying.
Noted. Anybody else? Okay, so moving on to agenda item 5, which is minutes, to confirm the minutes of the last meeting of the subcommittee held on 31st of January 2024. Can we take those as agreed? Agreed. Okay, and agenda item 6, any other business, Therese?
No other business.
Yep, Councillor Heap.
Yes, it's a note for the future with the proposed changes that are probably going to happen to planning committees, i.e. the reduction in the number of people who sit on them. As a council, we do need to have oversight on the use of S70C mechanism to refuse to determine applications, because at the moment we have no idea of the number or the circumstances of their usage. Most will be absolutely fine because there'll be plans that are similar to the ones that have been presented, but there is potential for abuse, I would say.
Okay. Your comments are duly noted. Any other business from any other members? Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7, which is site visits. Councillor Chris Pond.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very sorry to have to suggest that we have a site visit to Tewkesbury Close and Whittam Close. And the reason for that is that I visited this site myself a week or so ago, and I was very surprised to find a high fence had been erected, so I couldn't see it from the public highway. So having discussed matters with the ward member, I'm calling for a site visit to allow us to inspect this site, which is confusing and complicated.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Brooks? Just, yeah, mic off, great.
Yeah, thank you. I should like to second that
Okay.
because I think that the site, it is a particularly complex application, and you just cannot see it from a publicly accessible place. Thank you.
Okay. So if we can go to a vote, and I would just add a caveat as well, members. I know, we've discussed at length about site visits, and there's obviously good justification given, but on the back of the site visit that was undertaken today, I think there was a total of 2 members that had attended. So I think if we are proposing a site visit with the bestest of intentions, I know, weekdays are never good for a lot of us if we're working, but hopefully if, a site visit is being proposed, we'll have a good turnout from respective members of the committee, because it does take up considerable amount of officer time and resource for it. Councillor Kaufman, sorry, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to stop your flow. I feel bad about the site visits, but if they are made during a weekday, it's just impossible. We've made that quite clear. Hopefully the weather's getting better now, so if it's at 5 o'clock or 9 o'clock, then at least you can get to do your day job. So if we could be accommodated, and I support Councillor Pond's suggestion, because I also went and you can't see what's going on.
Okay. Councillor Sanger?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to say what I've said in the past as well. People have bothered to turn up to this meeting and to have a site visit being called now. I know it's in the Constitution, but I just think that if there was going to be a site visit, we should have actually perhaps got drawn to your attention. I don't understand why we're doing it, really. We should go ahead and sort of consider this application. The officers are ready to present it, so there's people here ready to listen to it. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think let's go to a formal vote on it. So the application agenda item 10, 6 Tewkesbury Close has been proposed for a site visit. If we can have a show of hands, all those in favour of a site visit?
7.
All those against?
4.
And any abstentions?
4.
Okay, so that application will be deferred to a subsequent planning committee pending the site visit. All speakers or all members of the public in the gallery, this item won't be heard this evening. So if you wanted to vacate or stay, you're most welcome, but totally understand if you wanted to leave as well. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 8. And I would just add, duly note Councillor Kaufman's point on this. I think if we can maybe work alongside the planning officer on this to try and schedule a site visit, which most members are able to make, I think that would add the most value for this committee. Yeah. So moving on to agenda item 8, which is planning application.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I might be misreading what I'm seeing, but I think there's an element of confusion about I think certainly one of the gentlemen might think that we're still going to discuss the issue.
Okay.
So you just need to be very explicit, I think.
Sure, yeah, happy to repeat that. So agenda item 10, which is 6 Tewkesbury Close, members have voted for a site visit to take place for that application. So any members of the public that were staying for this item, that item will no longer be heard this evening. It will be brought back to a subsequent committee meeting after the site visit has been carried out. So if you wish to leave, you're most welcome to leave. If you wanted to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're also welcome to stay.
Are we allowed to be there when you all come?
I think that would be, well, it's down to the planning officer and the applicant, but it's normally, the site visit is normally for members of the committee to be present, not...
By the side of our house in Luton Close, it's quite clear to get in now, and I'll leave the lock off for you.
Okay, maybe if we can engage, or get you to engage with the planning officer about that.
Okay.
Yep.
So I can go.
Okay, yes, you're free to leave. Okay, so if we move on to our first application of the evening, which is agenda item 8, and that's EPF 2193/23, 155 Forest Road, Loughton, IG 101EF. And over to our planning officer, Mr. Rogers, to present.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everybody. Yes, item 8 is 155 Forest Road in Loughton. This was a item that was previously deferred for a site visit, which took place today. So the proposal is to demolish an existing rear extension on the house and to erect a new single-storey rear extension and a dormer window as well. Proposals before members tonight due to an objection from Loughton Town Council and neighbours, and officers are recommending that planning permission is granted. So starting with the application site, it's located at the northern end of Forest Road, just off of the main settlement to the south. To give some site photos, this is the house here. It's the end house on at the end of a row. The next door is a block of flats, which is larger in height and of scale as well. And this photograph gives the existing rear elevation, which shows this existing single-storey element here, which is this white element here. And this is the existing and proposed floor plans that we've got. The plan at the top is the existing, and at the bottom is the proposed. Members can see that the extension has the same depth in terms of its rear projection. It is moving a little bit closer to the neighbours to the north, so the flatted units. It does leave a gap of about, excuse me, about 1.1 metres to that boundary. And here we have the existing and the proposed elevation. So the existing is this pitched style roof here, and the proposed is here. The proposed extension has the same maximum height as the existing. It will not extend beyond the neighbour to the south and leaves a reasonable gap to the neighbour to the north. The proposed dormer window is large. It does cover a lot of the roof slope, but it's expected in suburban areas and indeed is permitted development in most instances in these types of areas. So overall, it's concluded there wouldn't be any significant harm to the neighbours and the design is appropriate. So it is recommended that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We have one speaker on this item, which is Mr. David Woodford, who's the applicant, and he's here in person.
Daniel.
Daniel Woodford.
Thank you.
My
Thank you.
list seems to say
Yeah,
David,
it happens.
Mr. Woodford. So
Yeah.
over to you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Regarding the permitted development of 2 outbuildings, whilst a complaint has been made about the garden rooms, Claire Monday, the Senior Planning Enforcement Officer of the EFDC, visited the construction site and confirmed there's been no breach and the case has been closed. The garden rooms have been built to the design of the Lawful Development Certificate, EPF 142822, and the statements made in the objection letter are false. Regarding the objection to the planning application that a loss in symmetry would spoil the character of the area, the neighbour at 153 Forest Road has built an infill extension alongside the closet wing, removing any symmetry. The closet wing is not visible from the street and barely visible from the surrounding properties. The property is within a conservation area. The property is not within a conservation area, nor is the building listed. And regarding the comment that the roof is out of character and could be used as terraces, the infill extension at 153 has a flat roof with the infill, as do many other homes on a terrace. Normal practice would be to place a condition ensuring the roof is not used as a terrace, as suggested in the officer's recommendation. I'm now going to read from previous planning advice, which advised that flat roofs are acceptable. The principle of a single-storey rear extension has already been established through the implementation of the existing ground floor extension. Neighbouring properties have also constructed flat-roofed first-floor extensions, and therefore is a common feature to many of the properties. Our design and planning have followed the EFDC policy, which includes Epping Forest Local Plan DM16 Sustainable Drainage Systems. The Council will encourage the use of green roofs. Epping Forest District Council Sustainability Guidance submitted with the application. Section 1, Landscape-led design. Integrate green roofs with native wildflower and grass species. We believe this to be a positive addition to the environment and the character of the area. And London Plan Policy G5, urban greening. The inclusion of urban greening measures in new development will in an increase in green cover and should be integral to planning the layout and design of new buildings and developments. Addressing the comment about loss of amenity, the existing amenity space is 99 metres squared. The extension would reduce the outdoor amenity space by 9.6 metres squared. That's less than 10%.
Yeah. Mr. Whitford, if you just wanted to finish with a final statement.
I mean, that's pretty much, okay. Regarding the comment about the flat roof, is already suggested by the committee.
That's okay. So we have both of the ward councillors here present, Councillor Kaufman and Councillor Judy Jennings. Either of you wanted to make a comment? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't attend the site visit, but I went there this evening to have a look at a time after work. And I know that there have been a number of objections, including neighbours, and there is obviously the description in our planning document is wrong in the report. So this is an application to build a new extension and a large dormer roof at the rear. That's what this is about, isn't it, as far as I understand it? Okay. Is there any likelihood this is going to be carved into a separate dwelling and used as an HMO or whatever it is, or is it clearly just an extension to the existing house? That's the first thing. So we would not allow this to be a separate dwelling under any circumstances, I believe. That's the first question. I think the amenity space is just about enough. I am worried by the dormer because it is a low-pitched roof, because of this is probably an 1860s built house, therefore the roof pitch is low. And what we're going to have is a very large dormer that will go exactly to the ridge height. So I'm presuming the existing roof height is not being increased at all. Therefore, I'm worried if the dimensions of this actually are physically correct, that you can put a dormer of this size in, because I would think you haven't got the headroom to do it. But so I just need confidence. This is never going to be a separate dwelling. It is purely an extension. We would condition that it would always be purely an addition to the existing house, if it is approved, and some comfort that what seems to be a very low-pitched ceiling height and a dormer, which I hate, which goes up to the ridge level, which make houses look daft, we seem to allow those to go through. Thank you.
Yeah, just to come back on the first point. So we are considering the extensions to the house, which is the dormer and the single-storey element only. I cannot guarantee that it would never ever be a separate dwelling, but that is not what's being proposed tonight, and we have to look at what's being proposed in front of us tonight, which is it's for household extensions to an existing household. If the applicant wanted a separate dwelling, that would need a separate consent, and of course the council would then have control over that. On the point of the dormer, there is no requirement for a dormer to be set below the ridge line. It can't exceed the existing ridge. That would be under permitted development, but so anything that would extend the ridge upwards would need planning permission in its own right. That's not what's proposed here. They're going to do that all within the existing envelope of the current house.
Okay, any other members? Councillor Allgood.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was one of the persons that visited today, and it was useful in the sense that actually if you look at it as an extension, the existing building is going to get knocked out and it's one extra bit. It's a very small extension. I know, appreciate it looks rather big, but in the grand scheme of things, it's actually quite a small extension. We are here today to look at what's in front of us as a planning consideration, so all the things about the outbuildings are not part of the application as stated. The only one thing I would like to see is, can I have the pictures showing are there two flat roofs, e.g. two heights, or is it all one at the same level going across? It looked as almost if there was two flat roofs at two different heights. Yeah, so it's two separate ones, is it? Yeah. Right, okay, so that would be my issue, that it would have been quite high to be the same level all the way across. So the fact that it's now dropping to the new area, I see no problems with this at all. Thank you.
Okay, any other members? Councillor Chris Pond.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm sorry I wasn't at the site visit, but I was able to get a sneak preview of this through the side entrance a couple of days ago. I think this extension is too close to the block of flats to the north. It's about 4 foot is the maximum amount between the two. And that's all right if it were just a single-storey extension, but of course it also includes the dormer and other extensions. And together with the already erected outbuildings, which I know we're not considering tonight, I just think this provides too much. It's the quart in the pint pot. The design of the rear extension with two levels of flat roof is, to my mind, bizarre. And the applicant mentioning, as I think he did, if I didn't mishear him, the London plan is entirely irrelevant, because the London plan is null and void in Epping Forest since we're not in London. The rubric under the word proposal on page 13 of the agenda papers is totally misleading. And if anybody happened to read that, they would be totally perplexed. It's the demolition of an existing bungalow and the erection of two detached dwellings. I mean, this is madness, and that needs formally to be corrected. So I am not enamoured of this application, and I think it is too close to the block of flats adjacent and is not of a good design. So I shan't be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I also attended the site visit this morning. I totally agree with Councillor Pond about the proposal on page 13 needs to line up with the proposal on page 12. I'm somewhat concerned that the Town Council's comments include quite a few bits that are absolutely nothing to do with planning. And the roofs could be used as terraces. Well, we could say that with every flat roof in the district, but there is a condition to stop that. The inspection chamber is not a planning matter, so I'm really not sure why all these things are being said. Yeah, it is a different... it was useful to go on a site visit to see the other buildings, but they're not part of this proposal at all. I've seen so many of these throughout the district. I'm likening it to lots of the buildings in Gladstone Road in Buckhurst-Hill. They all have rear extensions. They're all doing this. I can see very little reason to refuse this at all. I'm just struggling to find any reason to refuse it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other members? So, I think we can move to a vote on this, by the way. So the officer's recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Can we have a show of hands of all those in favour? All those against?
1.
And abstentions?
1.
Okay, so members, that application has been approved.
Chairman.
Yeah. I think it's a very valid point, so noted, and we can check that over in the minutes. So moving on to application agenda item 9, which is EPF 2469/23 Corner Garth Nursery Road, Loughton IG10 4EF, and over to Mr. Rogers to present the application.
Oh, I'm very...
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, item 9 is Corner Garth on Nursery Road in Loughton. The proposal this time is to level out the garden and to erect a retaining wall at the end of it. Proposal is before members tonight due to an objection from the Town Council and neighbours, and officers are recommending that planning permission is granted. So starting with the application site, it's located on the corner of Nursery Road and Highview Close in this prominent position. Currently, you can see the garden rises up towards the rear of the site. This is obviously the main house and the rear garden here. And this is the existing plan in, this is the existing situation in plan form, which this shows sort of a cross section here. And this is the proposal to, so as members will see, the land will be lowered and a new retaining wall will be added to the end of the garden. It's approximately 2.3 metres in height. It's very minor and small scale. It is set away from the neighbour that backs onto this house. And overall, officers conclude there would be no significant harm to living conditions of neighbours or significant design concerns. There is, members will see a landscape condition proposed so that any potentially lost trees will be replaced. A scheme will be presented. So to preserve the character and appearance of the area. Just to also say that in most instances, the contouring or levelling of garden doesn't normally need planning permission. It can be a matter of fact and degree as to whether or not it's of a scale that needs planning permission. This is the case that's before us, and we've taken the view that in this case it would need it. But in this case, we are recommending that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rogers, for clarifying that point. Actually, very important to know. We have two speakers on this item. The first is an objector, Mr. Robson, who's here in person. Mr. Robson, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. We're objecting to the rear garden alterations on sort of 2 bases. One, we feel that the application itself is very vague and it's not sort of explaining how it's going to be done sufficiently, because we've had significant issues with subsidence in the past. So our neighbour on the other side had an extensive remodel, and that created a subsidence issue for the house, which has led to subsequent insurance issues and so forth. It's the picture that you've got, the photo you've got up there is quite deceptive. It's quite a significant amount of remodelling that's going on there, and I think to say it's minor is not correct. There was a mention of potential replacement of trees, and I think this goes to the point that we are, the houses on Highview Close are very concerned about the nature of the planning applications that have gone through, because as was put into your packs for this evening, In a previous application, it was noted that no trees would be removed from the property, and then I think that went up on the website, and 2 days later we watched the tree surgeons come around and cut all the trees down in the property, including all the trees that were screening our property at the back from this property. I know you can't go into the specifics, all those 12 other applications which have gone through, which have been submitted since September 2022, but everyone that I've read has had misleading or erroneous information included in them, from whether the place is inhabited, the number of rooms that are going to be in it, use of, basically an enormous number of things. So for this particular application, which seems, I think, relatively minor, there's a quite strong concern from us about how it's going to be enacted and the effect it's going to have on our property, and also if it's not very sort of tightly controlled, what else they may do, because they've already done things that they have said they haven't done, and whether that's sort of, deliberate or not, obviously I don't comment on that, but certainly I think certain applications have gone through that have been approved, and then the next application has gone through to be approved, and so on and so forth, and I feel that they are trying to circle back to the enormous property that they proposed in September 2022, which was subsequently denied. And have I how much? Okay, as I've got time, I'm just quickly going to mention the drop curb, which has been approved because it goes through a double yellow line. I believe that's illegal, but I know that's not within the purview of this, but I think it goes to the wider concern about the applications and the spirit that they're being submitted in, and the information that you as a planning committee are receiving.
Thank you very much. And we have a second speaker on this item, who is the applicant's agent, and that's Mr. David Kavanagh, who's here in person. Mr. Kavanagh, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. As you've seen from the application drawings, it is proposed that the existing steep tiered garden is to be levelled so that it is at the same level as the existing patio. The applicant has a young family, and the current tiered garden, which rises up towards the rear of the site, is generally unsafe for the use of young children and impractical and difficult to maintain. As the case officer has made clear in her report, the current proposal would normally be permitted development. However, a reinforced concrete retaining wall will be constructed in order to ensure the ground stability of the adjacent properties, in particular 12 Highview Close, which is immediately behind the application site. We welcome the inclusion of the landscaping condition, as our client is keen to create an attractive landscaped garden to include new tree and shrub planting. In fact, we have already submitted a plan to the case officer, which was displayed on the screen earlier, which includes our client's landscaping intention for the rear garden once the lowering has been implemented. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Neither of the ward members is here, so maybe if I just kind of add in my 2 cents worth. I was just looking, obviously, through the report, and I do note what the objector has said, but as members will be very well aware, we can only determine the applications that is obviously presented before us. And from the officer's report, I do note, whilst there has been some loss of trees, actually none of the trees were subject to a tree preservation order. So, as such, the removal of the trees doesn't require permission from the planning authority. And I think what's quite sort of relevant to this particular application is the tree and landscape officer's comment, which highlights no objection. So, from my point of view, I don't really have any significant concerns. But over to members of the committee, if we, Councillor Kaufman first.
Thank you, Chair. As there's not one award officer here, so I'm just going to voice some concerns which could maybe translate into conditions, because if I were a neighbour and there were mature trees on my boundary, even if they were not TPO'd, I would expect similar mature trees to be put back, not a landscaping plan that takes 20 years to reach fruition. So we have plenty of tree policies in Loughton. We want to maintain tree cover, very important to Loughton. So the loss of trees and replaced by 2-foot-high shrubs is not acceptable. So I haven't read in detail the landscaping plan because I thought there would be a ward member here. So I would like to make sure that there's a robust landscaping plan which replaces mature trees of a similar height to that which existed. And the other concern I have, because I've suffered with this as well, is one of drainage. Because if there's going to be a very solid retaining wall on the party line or the boundary, what could happen is natural drainage will be interfered with. So whatever happens in terms of that retaining wall, it's got to allow drainage so a neighbouring garden is not suddenly flooded because the water's got nowhere to go. It's interfering with the traditional drainage. These are unintended consequences that always happen. So we need to make sure that the adjoining neighbour does not suffer unduly because of this. Thank you.
And I note both of your points, Councillor Cuthman. I would just draw attention to condition 4 on this application, which kind of does state sort of something similar to what you mentioned about the replanting of trees. And I think the Tree and Landscape Officer has also recommended that there will be some replanting of trees to offset the trees lost on the site. But condition 4 does sort of encompass what you mentioned about the species planting and size with a timetable for implementation of that. So hopefully that is covered by condition 4. Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask a question about that?
We don't normally allow members of the public to interject during the debate. So if we pass over to Councillor Sanger.
Thank you, Councillor Kaufman. I think, Chairman, I think he's mentioned what I was going to suggest. But just on a different note, the Town and Country Planning Act, the general permitted, allows you to actually with level the back there without a planning permission. So the only reason it's here is because there's a retaining wall of 2.4 metres. If that retaining wall wasn't there, they wouldn't need planning permission. Is that right, Mr. Rogers?
That's my view, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just on the retaining wall, I understand this is going to run along the back, so it'll be up against number 12, Highview Close. I believe that's my understanding is correct. Yeah. What about the land levels on the house next door? Are they affected as well?
That's the purpose of the retaining wall, to keep it status quo. Essentially, that's not going to be touched.
So just to clarify it, you're saying this wall will run along the back and also the side, is that correct? I'm referring to the house which is actually next to this property, not the one which is behind it.
Are you referring to Glen Terrace, the one on Nursery Road? It will go... Okay, right, so not Highview Close, but the one next door. Right. Yeah, so the wall will go up to the boundary with that neighbour.
So will it or won't it be an L-shaped wall? Will it protect the land from the house next door as well as the one at the rear? The one at the rear is 12 Highview Close.
I will just have to check see if I've got any drawings on that. I will just have to check some drawings on that because I don't have that in the presentation.
Okay. Just whilst Mr. Rogers is trying to dig that out, any other members who wanted to make any comments? Councillor Chris Bond.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you may recall that Mary Tudor said that when they dug her up, they would find Calais engraved on her heart. Now, a few decades ago, if anyone had dug me up, they would have found the words retaining wall engraved on my heart. And that is because I had to withdraw from the purchase of a house because of a defective retaining wall. And the defective retaining wall was said to be defective because the fill behind it was done inappropriately, and that it was too close to the property I was intending to buy. So I feel that the conditions should take into account the point that Councillor Wixley just raised, should involve conditions as to what the fill is to be composed of and how it should be incorporated in the land, and also for us to make sure that the retaining wall or walls are appropriate. And if this application is approved, I would suggest to the owners of the adjacent properties that they engage the services of a very competent party wall surveyor, because this sort of work, I think, is on the whole inappropriate, and we should certainly condition it to ensure stability of the retaining wall. Condition 3 I wanted to allude to. That is where that could be incorporated. And I wanted to question with Mr. Rogers the officer comment on page 20 about demolition of the existing bungalow. Of course, there is no planning permission to demolish the bungalow, as the council knows to its cost. Demolition even of a locally listed building, and we've had 2 in the last 5 years, does not require planning permission. And if an owner decides to do it, they can just do it. It is not regulated by the Act. So I think that is a rather misleading comment. On the whole, I don't like this application, but I think it could be made acceptable by altering the conditions. Thank you.
Noted. I just wonder, from the kind of planning point of view, Mr. Rogers, with or in light of what Councillor Crispon has said, whether it's more of a building regulations issue versus a planning matter. So if you wouldn't mind just elaborating on that for us.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify where the retaining wall is going, it is going to be along Glen Terrace all the way across and at the back of Highview Close as well. So, so that's that point. On Councillor Pond's point, yes, it is more of a building regulations aspect rather than a full planning one, but I do take the point.
Yep, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair, just for allowing me to come back, because the more you stir sometimes. So is this going to be a grey concrete wall then? So how does this work? Is it actually going to be on the adjoining property's land so the neighbour can still put a fence up on their land? This really must be conditioned and drawn. I think there must be detailed plans drawn before this can be approved. We must understand what we're consenting to. I'm not sure we do.
I mean, if you feel that the materials of the wall are important, then that can be conditioned, as in the details to be submitted to and approved in writing by the local authority prior to commencement.
Yeah, Councillor Williamson and then Councillor Pond.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to come back, so I've got the drawing up, and the retaining wall does go both sides, as we just heard. I totally agree the materials to be used should be conditioned. I think that's a very good point. I think on the water problem, if anybody's going to have a problem, it's probably the corner property, because they're going to be that much lower than everywhere else. But again, with good, solid construction and proper land drains laid underneath and around the retaining wall, it is easily manageable. Most of the buildings in London have this sort of configuration. So it's a technical thing on the construction, but it's perfectly feasible. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Crispon, did you want to come back?
Yes, I was just going to pick up the point that Mr. Rogers made. If we amend condition 3, which is, I imagine, what he's alluding to, there is no reason, is that, although it may also be covered by buildings regulations, is that we shouldn't condition what materials form the raising of the landscape adjacent to and near all sides of the proposed retaining wall.
Sorry, can you ask?
Yes, you suggested quite appropriately, I think, that the details of the materials, the foundations, etc. of the retaining wall be submitted to LPA's authority in advance. I'm suggesting that the fill being used behind the retaining wall, because it relates to its stability, should also be conditioned.
Okay, yeah, I understand. That can be added as well.
Councillor Wixley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can I just come back on the issue which I raised about the adjoining property? I think I've understood you correct, because I can't get the drawings up on the iPad, so I haven't got the name of that property which is next to it. But the wall refers to, which we've got in here, is 2.4 metres high. Is that going to be the same height alongside the adjoining property, or will that be reduced? It looks as if that wall is stepped down, so it's not the same height all the way through. So, yeah, I just feel we've not got enough details about this wall, really. It makes it difficult for me to make a decision on this. I think we should have had a much more detailed report. So I'm not really very happy with that.
Okay, members, anybody else who'd like to pitch in? Okay, so members, we have an officer's recommendation to approve, subject to conditions, and I think quite sensibly we've got an additional condition which I've noted as materials in the fill behind the retaining wall to be used to the satisfaction of the local planning authority, which we can add on as an extra condition as condition 6. So we have the officer's recommendation to approve subject to those conditions. Can we have a show of hands, all those in favour? All those against?
2.
And abstentions? Okay, so that application has been approved. So moving on to agenda item 11, exclusion of public and press, which I don't believe there is any.
No.
Okay, so I close the meeting at 7:47.